instructions for being the girl they call leader.
You know, it's been nearly 100 years, and still it's hard to get women elected.
If you only hear a men's perspective, like, women are never going to be heard, and like they'll never get their chance to be in power. It'll always be like men in power.
I think it's important that young people also have a say in what happens.
I know you wish me well, it's not the same.
You know, they need to have a say, and they need to know that they can have a say.
Hey, don't you know the good road to hell is paved this way?
The Old Boys Network is not just men. There are many women that are part of the Old Boys Network.
Canadian politics is kind of broken right now.
Baby, I can't always wonder if I'm going under.
Half of the world is females anyway, so why the heck wouldn't there be like half of women in politics?
How can you look at me and be so unsure? Hey baby, how can you bet on me to come up short?
This is the most important issue for the women of the next generation. They want their voices to be heard.
Stick around, you might just discover I'm as good as any other.
Rwanda's way ahead of us. Cuba's way ahead of us. Afghanistan is way ahead of us.
I'm still really struggling to understand why Canada is as far behind as it is.
The United Nations has said 30% is a minimum for women sitting or holding elected seats at the municipal, provincial, or federal tables. And right now, we are at 25% or less.
I would say that 25% is only half of where we need to go. It's not another 5%, it's another 25.
Do we have gender parity or equality? No.
We're wasting energy, ideas, innovation.
It's rather unfortunate that we're setting a target that automatically makes sure that women aren't going to be as involved as men.
And women make up more than 50%. You know, marginally more than 50%, but more than 50% of the Canadian population. But nowhere in Canada do they represent 50% of the elected representatives.
51% et plus de la population, ce sont des femmes au pays. Alors, il n'y a pas de raison pourquoi que les décisions seraient prises uniquement par un genre, qui serait les hommes. Il faut qu'il y ait un mélange des deux. Il faut que ça soit complémentaire.
For me, the ideal is when our political leaders actually reflect the people we serve.
Just like racial minorities and everyone else should be probably better represented than they are by white men.
The population of Canada is not 75% male, white lawyers.
And we should have a few of those people represented in politics. They are an important voice in this country, but there are a lot of voices in this country, and they're all important.
When men alone are making the decisions, the women lose out. There's no two ways about that.
As the mayor of a municipality, I'm going to represent everyone that lives here, whether they're male or female or young or old. But I bring a unique perspective being a woman and bringing someone that's under 40.
I don't think the problem is that young people don't know what they believe in. I think they're very clear as to what they believe in. I think what they don't necessarily believe in is that they actually have a right and should be recognized as having a voice.
We don't tell women outright, no, you can't have that. We tell them that you can, but then as a society, we act like they can't have it because there's no role models to show them, there's no books to read them, there's no mentors to give them, there's no people to come into their classes and speak to them. So if you don't see yourself in those places, why would you consider it an option?
Having women present, visible, I think it tells all women that there is a place for them in public life.
If we're going to be able to come up with a solution for some of the structural inequalities that we're seeing in our society, we need everybody on board, and that means that young women have to be involved as well.
Just a little confidence in me, baby.
Understand that you have been born underdog, that you will have to claw from the back of the pack to be leader. You may not have been given a head start, but success is not impossible. We women are 50% population, 30% recommendation, and only 25% implementation when it comes to running this country. But trust me, having the odds stacked against you can fuel a fire rather than extinguish it. Be confident in your ability to lead. Even if you don't see many like you in the game, to level the playing field, you have to be willing to get off the bench. Make it your duty to throw a wrench into any system that thinks it can work without you. The way it's always been doesn't mean that way is right. So see naysayers as an extra push to create change. Challenges can also be opportunities. You must shift your own perspective before you can expect to lift others out of ingrained ways of thinking that say you are better off somewhere else.
It's just a matter of someone stepping up to the plate and actually addressing the issues and addressing women's issues specifically.
When it comes to budgets, it's men making the decisions for women, and that's not right.
Why are there budget cuts that limit women's ability to provide services to their families or community?
Take me to the east end.
You know, at the end of the day, any budget is never large enough for everything that you want to do today.
You have to have good fiscal policy so that you can have good social policy. The two of them are inextricably linked.
You know, someone might think it's just, let's create these jobs, and not understanding, well, okay, create the jobs, but it might be about having good childcare, and it might be about having good housing, and it might be about, you know, making sure that people are not living on the streets, and making sure you have a good environment. And traditionally, some of those things might be more on the spectrum of what women would bring forward.
We as regulators in government need to be able to put into place the frameworks around which neighborhoods are built. And we can only do that if we really understand the decisions that people make for their families. And increasingly, not increasingly, always, those decisions have been made by women.
I feel very uncomfortable when someone is trying to make an important decision about what happens to me, my family, my community, without my input.
It's very much a case of men have to listen to the women, and that's not something that they've done for many years, and it's difficult for them. They'll be crossing me for saying that.
It's very understandable that 30% would be the target that the UN would set, because we know that at 30%, different issues start to be discussed at the level of whatever government, whether it's municipal, whether it's federal, whether it's state or provincial. We know that there's a broader range of issues that are discussed, issues that, you know, historically have been called women's issues, but I don't accept as women's issues, issues of poverty, issues of child well-being. Those are the kinds of things, more social issues, that are discussed when there's a 30% representation of women.
The caucus that I'm in now with 40% women is different. It's more respectful. We listen very, very carefully. We listen better than perhaps in the past.
While men can advocate for women and can speak on women's issues, they don't have the actual experience of how policy, how governmental decisions can affect women differently than they can for men.
It's important that I have a voice there so that I can bring up these things that aren't being considered by my other colleagues. They might not think that active transportation routes or creation of a dog park for community members is important. But if they don't think it's important, then they're not going to raise it, and they're going to have their priorities take the top spot during budget.
As a female leader in education, you know, I see a lot of men who come at it maybe from a purely business perspective, but I think women have, you know, that balance of looking at the whole person, looking at the social side, the emotional side, as well as the, you know, the physical well-being of individuals, and I think, you know, good business sense as well.
Il faut que ce soit un mélange des deux pour faire avancer les dossiers, pour qu'il y ait une perspective féminine derrière l'étude des dossiers, l'approche, comment est-ce qu'on va régler telle et telle situation, les défis qu'on doit confronter, comment est-ce qu'on peut arriver à les résoudre, toujours en complémentarité avec nos collègues masculins qui sont à la même table que nous.
Women have a bit of a different perspective sometimes than guys, and moms have a different perspective than an individual who may have only come from corporate Canada. A farmer has a different perspective than someone who's always lived in urban downtown Toronto. And that diversity of views is what really enriches the Parliament of Canada.
That's what democracy is all about. It's the sense that power has to be shared. That power is about The power is basically being able to bring your voice to the table and become part of the discussion.
You as a politician, whether you're a man or a woman, are making decisions for people down the line 20, 30 years, right? Politics moves slowly, we all know that. So I mean, in terms of actually making a difference, it's a long process. And having women actively engaged in that process, the sooner the better.
I think that we underestimate the desperation that young people feel. Like, I am desperate for change. If you're older and you're in politics, that desperation's a little less. You probably have a pension. You probably have a nursing home maybe set up, family to take care of you. You're probably gonna die before the environment gets really bad. So I think that for me, it was partly, I'm desperate. If something doesn't change, if I don't start fixing something, and if my generation doesn't start fixing something, or if the people in power currently don't start fixing something, well, it's all gonna go to hell in a handbasket pretty quickly. If we have to live with the decisions the longest, and if we often have to pay for the decisions the longest, we should be pretty high on the priority list when making those decisions.
And a song.
When the words of others feel like bullets to your confidence, stick to your guns. Focus on those who use their tongues to applaud and uplift you. There will always be some who want to hold you hostage with their language. Learn that what they say is a stronger reflection of them than of you. That being said, though it is unfair in so many ways, your body will constantly be under scrutiny. No matter how strong the urge, do not dissect yourself. Do not mistake your mirror for microscope or Mother Nature's architecture for imperfection. The chorus of voices finding flaws is strong enough without adding your own.
I think more women would take on political and leadership roles if there wasn't such a negative stigmatism around feminism and politicians.
I feel like this word has just become almost like the new F word for women.
Women are judged on the way they dress rather than the issues they bring to the table.
If a woman takes charge, she does think she's bossy. If a guy takes charge, he's like, oh, he's so strong, he's so masculine. So like, it's harder for women to get up there because like as soon as a woman does something, they're all like, oh, like I don't like her, she's mean.
We live in a society where politicians are ranked as being less trustworthy than used car salesmen and slightly more trustworthy than a lawyer or a weatherman.
On devrait un peu comme démystifier le terme féminisme. C'est un terme, puis c'est bien comme question que vous posez, parce que c'est un terme qui fait peur également aux jeunes femmes.
Because to express a voice means that they're a feminist and a politician. Like these two bad things.
I see that in school. I see that with young ladies as they enter maybe grade 7, grade 8. They do have a lack of confidence.
Whenever a man is firm, oh, they say he's good, you know, he's a good man. And whenever a woman talks in the same way, oh, well, she's an aggressive, and we know the other word that they use to describe us.
C'est presque légitime qu'on s'attende à ce qu'une femme soit une femme, demeure une femme.
I know a lot of really great women in my community that don't want to run for politics, don't want to get involved because they don't want to deal with that criticism. And they would be absolutely fantastic. They have great ideas, they're hardworking. I think that in a lot of cases, they just need to put themselves out there and see how strong they really are.
I'd be lying if I said it doesn't hurt. I'd be lying if I said it's just water off a duck's back. It isn't. But you have to always, at least for me, what I do is I understand that I live in a world that is ferociously partisan, and my job is to drive positive change. And I gotta stay focused on that and, you know, let the others play the games they want to play.
You do see a different approach to men and women that is around appearance as opposed to concerns in the community, perspective about issues or policy.
Who could turn on a TV or go to a website or, you know, even go to Facebook and see the ads that are on Facebook or anywhere else and not say that we treat women differently than men?
I was called adorable by our local radio station, the most adorable mayor in Alberta. They would never say that about a man.
And I remember giving one of my State of the City addresses, which is a chamber event, biggest one anywhere in Canada. And the focus was all about she's got straight hair now instead of announcing jobs, which I did, talking about the future of the community, talking about where we would go.
Women are constantly criticized in the media based on how they look, how well their hair is done, their clothes, whether or not their makeup is too bold.
There's nothing new and there's nothing old about the notion of objectifying women, and many different kinds of media do it very, very often.
When you're a woman seeking a position of power, part of what you're trying to do is change society. Even if it's not necessarily the specific part of society that catcalls women on the street, part of what you're trying to do is change the world. And when you're doing that, you're seen as a body and not as a person who's trying to do good work. That's really problematic.
Leadership is about creating that message about a vision that no one else has, and then communicating in a way that people want to follow you to where it is. They don't even know where they're going, but you do. You do. And if somewhere along the line your credibility as a leader has been impacted by some ridiculous comment about baggy suits or unkept hair or whatever, like totally unrelated information, and if it detracts from your leadership, then that does affect your confidence.
When women think about politics, one of the things they think about is how they will appear to the public. I mean, that is the way we are all socialized. Men think about how they're going to appear to the public too, and one of the ways women are judged is on what they wear, what their hair is doing, whether they wear makeup or not, all of those things. And those are not necessarily things that men think about or worry about.
It's not necessarily something that you should have to invest your time and energy towards, but unless you do, you can never get to the root of what you really stand for.
A newspaper may put Brad Pitt on its, boxcars if it has a story about him in the hopes that women will look at it. But chances are probably better that we'll be putting an attractive actor on there. And we don't show a lot of men's legs. We don't show a lot of men's chests.
So, yes, the media deal with men and women differently, but they only reflect what we accept as society.
Recognize that though focus will inevitably fall on other parts, your beauty lies in your vocal cords, so flaunt them. Do not let comments distract from your commitment or the way others play the game take you from your goals. Your role is defined only by you. So play your part with an unbreakable determination. Resist the urge to give up with every fiber of your femininity, and remember that word is synonymous with strength. Break from outdated molds trying to hold you in place and chisel yourself into success.
Should I stay or should I go? Should I stay or should I go?
Being a teenager of today in society, we don't really see the importance of understanding the political system of Canada.
What is lacking is policies, procedure, budget assignments, and so on, to actually motivate these women to participate in politics.
In civics, we're taught about the system. We're taught how it works, what it is, but we're not taught the steps to get into the system. So if there's barriers for the woman in society to even get to the services that she needs, there's even more barriers in place for her to even think that she's ever going to be in politics one day.
I mean, a lot of my friends who are interested in going into a political area, they don't see it as a long term. They see it as, oh, I could be involved for a few years, but then I'll settle down and have my family. But then for a man, it's like they have ultimate goals, like, oh, I want to run for prime minister, I want to run for this or this position.
I think when females maybe look at politicians, they just see, wow, this is a male-dominated world, and how can I ever break into that world?
So I spent 3 years trying to convince more people to run for office, to get more involved in politics. Civic engagement is a major part of what I do, and even fewer women than we've ever had before ran for office in the 2013 election. So whatever we're doing, it ain't working.
Political parties need the will to change. But it's men that are making those decisions mostly.
Les niveaux politiques, que ce soit municipal, provincial ou national, je pense qu'il faut déjà enlever des barrières. C'est qu'il y a des barrières qui se sont avec les années, ou je devrais même pas dire avec les années, mais qui ont toujours été là finalement. Il faut enlever les barrières. chez les femmes qui veulent faire de la politique.
If it's 25% women, then it's 75% men, and it's the men that people are going to because even if they don't have the experience, they feel that they have the experience sometimes just simply because they're men.
I don't think at the end of the day that it's all that different. I think the same things matter to men and women, but I do think there's a different way of communicating.
Women tend to look at issues very differently than men. They tend to be a lot more emotional. Often women's version of power looks like collaboration, something that is not valued by often the male structures of power that have been invented.
The conflict and the expectation of conflict is written into not just the processes, but the actual building, so the opposition and the government sit 2 sword lengths apart because there's always the possibility that the swords will be drawn.
The government sits across from the opposition, and there's this back and forth, and it can look like something that people who want to contribute don't want to become involved with.
The political world can be really aggressive, really male-dominated, and pushes a lot of women away. And so what we find is that these barriers that exist towards more aggressive dialogue can really limit the impact that women feel that they're making in that sphere.
Women are very reluctant to give or spend their time when they don't believe they can make a difference, or they won't be allowed to make a difference, or their voices won't be heard in a way to make a difference.
I can understand someone looking at it from outside thinking, why would I want to become involved in that? It's a vicious kind of blood sport.
They feel uncomfortable entering into a milieu that is very aggressive, very demanding, and often involves late hours into the evening. There's limited support in terms of childcare or backstopping a woman with respect to her responsibilities.
It's amusing to me when I meet many people from my early life, or even people who've known me since I was a young mom, and they will say, and they're saying it as a compliment. They are saying it in the most complimentary and loving way. Isn't it amazing where you are now? You're just a mom. You were a mom. And look at you now.
Meetings are often held in the evenings, which make it very difficult for women who may be primary caregivers to attend. So the structure is set up to provide obstacles for women to get involved, or that create obstacles for women to get involved.
This was a job that was done by old men in their 50s and 60s at the height of their professional careers traditionally. And so a lot of even the calendar and the schedule all still derives from that. And yet that's not the face of who is trying to be in municipal leadership these days.
So when you're looking at getting young women involved in politics, there's a lot of life challenges that can get in the way with family, with different types of obligations.
I was always someone who was working hard to try and get more people involved in politics. I struck out every single time, and I particularly struck out with women. Now, I'm used to striking out with women, but this was different. They would say to me, I've never considered that. I've never even thought of it. The whole idea of that is incompatible with my life. I've got young kids. I want to start a family. I don't want every misstep I make to be on the front page of the newspaper. I don't want my kids to be teased about it at school. The meetings are late at night, which is totally incompatible with the way I live my life. And these things, I think, were very systemic. And we have to think about how to make them better.
I raised 3 children, and I was very much the primary caregiver. And so many people got to know me in that role. From my perspective, that qualifies me for this job. That qualifies me to be the premier. It doesn't disqualify me.
But if we cultivated an environment where all people felt that their voices were heard and that their insight and experience would be valued equally with everyone else who's being asked, then I think you'd see a lot of people step up.
But in the eyes of the system that we've set up, putting on your resume that you have been a stay-at-home mom or that you've been a primary caregiver, that doesn't even enter most people's minds. It's not even something that one would consider doing. That's considered a time out of career. And I think that's wrong.
And when you reach the top, or even before then, take a moment to stop and stretch a hand out to others trying to climb their own mountains. We can work to be strong by ourselves, but nothing can conquer what we are able to do together. Look at each other and see sisters instead of foes. Make your voices heard in harmony like unrelenting megaphones. If we are not speaking for ourselves, be guaranteed someone else will take the microphone.
Get involved in any opportunities that might present themselves for you to become engaged in the political society.
Yeah, I challenge my peers to use your voice and demand change. We have a voice, and if we use it, we can really change things.
The three levels of government have a role to play in this. The municipal government, the provincial government, and the federal government have a role encouraging and empowering these young women.
We live through experiences and we learn from experiences. If you're scared to fail, then you're never going to succeed.
We talk a lot about what we don't have in our society right now, but I think that means it's our job to create that for future generations. We are the young people right now who are looking into these things, but we don't have the politicians to look up to right now, so why can't we be those politicians?
We need to make sure as a community that those bright young women with those great ideas and that passion to serve and that passion for the community don't have that flame extinguished by the system the way it is now.
I have great hope that with more women, with that 30%, 50%, maybe 60%, that it will change, that the dynamic will change.
I think that you can show leadership and advocacy in every piece of your life. And I think that just means whether you have a passion about something, whether it's an issue or whether it's something that you think is going really well, that you be vocal about it.
You need to start avec la flamme éternelle, that eternal flame that's inside of you, that wants to improve her community, that wants to share her knowledge and her competencies.
It's not enough to just want to be a politician. You have to have something that motivates you, something that really is important to you, and that's how I got involved in politics.
C'est nécessaire de motiver nos jeunes femmes à vouloir aller de l'avant avec ces mêmes valeurs-là pour faire avancer la cause, pour qu'on soit une société égalitaire. C'est ça qu'est ma vision, une société égalitaire.
What we need to do is make sure they all have champions. And I think the more champions we have, it sort of grows on itself.
Young women have to be mentored, they have to be taught, they have to be helped.
Someone once said to me, those of us who have been successful have to always remember to send the elevator back down. We have to remember that there are people who are just at the beginning of what could be a wonderful career.
It's really important for girls to know they have someone to help them. They have a backup, they have someone that they can look up to, someone that they can call.
And to have somebody tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, you can do this, and I think that you should, I think that that's really important.
To the young woman who doesn't know that her voice matters, she has opinions, she has hopes, she has dreams, she has things that she would like to see in her life, she has things that she would like to see in the lives of people that she cares about. We don't have that voice. We don't have enough of that voice. And so how are things ever going to change if we don't ever hear it?
If you're rendered invisible, you have no power, right? And you have no power in your everyday life. So you also need to make your voices heard outside of the mainstream politics and get involved in advocacy groups and grassroots groups.
Politics is about improving people's lives, and so the issues that are of most interest to us are the ones that we can advance, and so be interested and be involved.
When Girls Thrive, Canada thrives, and I think it's important that they get involved one way or the other, either through volunteering or paid position, or even sitting on a board.
Sitting on something like the Police Commission or the Economic Development Authority. There's lots of boards that we appoint citizens to.
Women should get involved volunteering in their school system, running for school politics, getting involved in clubs and organizations in the school.
It's supporting a strong candidate, especially a woman who shares your values and your vision for the community, as a volunteer or as a donor.
The best way to get involved in politics is to volunteer. Find a candidate who reflects your values. I think it always goes back to values. Find someone who reflects your values. You don't need to know them. You don't need to have any connection. Just say, I like what you're doing. I want to help you. How can I help?
There are campaigns at the municipal level, at the provincial level, at the federal level. There are riding associations and volunteer opportunities. There's always a way to get involved. All you have to do is to walk into a constituency office of a politician and say, I want to be involved.
Getting involved can look like lots of things, but that when you involve yourself instead of waiting for someone to ask you to involve yourself, that's where you believe, that's where you create those networks, that's where you find things you believe in, that's where you find causes you believe in, that's where you find people you believe in, that's where you find people who believe in you.
Les gens ont reconnu en moi certains rôles de leadership et certaines habiletés aussi. Donc, c'est comme ça que, par conséquent, on développe une confiance en soi et qu'on peut développer aussi également des gens, un groupe de gens qui vont t'appuyer et qui vont t'aider si tu veux aller vraiment en politique.
Once you have a sense of confidence, then you have a freedom.
And as soon as you have confidence, you realize that you can do anything that you want to do and be wherever you want to be. And if that means being the mayor, or it means being the prime minister, or being something else along those lines, that it could happen for you as well.
I think I have to say, you start with you. You have to believe you're important, and you have to believe your voice matters before anyone else is going to believe it matters.
Just go for it. You know, step up, do it, because you won't regret it.
And don't let anyone slow you down or stop you, and understand that you will run into sexism and you will run into people who don't quite get it yet.
Don't be afraid, don't be intimidated, because each and every one of us has something important to give, to offer, to contribute, and every person should know that they have those gifts.
If you think the world is perfect, if you think everybody has all the opportunity they need to be as great as they can be, then you don't need to get involved because everything's working just fine for you. But if you actually can imagine a better world, it's not going to happen by itself. It happens because people decide they want to drive change.
We're evolving, and we need everybody on board to get to the right place. Have we finished evolving, and have we found the perfect system? Absolutely not. We've got a lot of work to do, and we've got to pay attention to the changes that need to be made.
If you must work twice as hard to be seen as half as much, give 1,000% to your passions. The numbers may not add up, but we are not trying to be mathematicians. We are trying to be history makers. We are trying to be system shakers and game changers. So understand that you may have to claw from the back of the pack to be leader, but success is not impossible. And your head start can begin right now.
I know you wish me well, it's not the same. Hey, don't you know the good road to hell is paved this way? Baby, yeah, you can't always wonder if I'm going under. How can you look at me and be so unsure? Hey, baby, how can you bet on me to come up short? Stick around, you might just discover I'm as good as any. From a fall, but I'm so sick of playing it safe. Isn't love about faith? If you won't let me stand, you make me crawl, and I don't need you holding my hand. No, after all, there's no pride in playing